Joshua. I think we're going to finish chapter 10 today.
Oh.
I think so. We are in Joshua chapter 10. And heretofore, we were reading about Adonai-Zedek. Everybody remember what that means?
That snake.
The king of righteousness, which he clearly is not. But that is what he calls himself. And he is the king of, anybody remember? Jerusalem. And he heard, we read it earlier, he heard, which is word of mouth, which is a really important thing I was thinking about. You know, they didn't have radios and telephones and computers and stuff like that. And so word got passed in markets and by traveling merchants and things like that, mostly. Word about what news. And what movie is that where somebody says, "What news?" Is that the 13th Warrior? I think so. Whenever you met somebody new, whether it was somebody coming from afar or whatever, you're like, "Hey, what's going on?"
Yeah.
You know, and you want to know what you just came from afar. I want to hear all the news because that's the only way to get it. So anyway, he heard that the city of Ai, which was full of mighty men, had been taken by the Israelites. He heard that Jericho, which had the great walls, had fallen to the Israelites, and that Gibeon, which was a mighty city, a strong city, they sued for peace. And they used, remember we read about the trickery they used. And so they caved, if you will, to the Israelites. And he was worried, and so he called his 4 fellow kings, which was Hoham, Piram, Japhia, and Debir. And he said, "Hey, come help me attack Gibeon, because I can't do it on my own, and we got to stop these guys or we're all toast." And all of these people, all of these 5 kingdoms were Amorites, which is a subclan of Canaanites. And so that's what all these people are. And then last week we read about how Joshua, when he hears about this, you know, the Gibeonites say, "Hey, come help us because this whole huge army is against us." And so Joshua conducted that night march, like with almost no preparation. We marched tonight, and they marched all night long up into the hills, which is arduous. And then they fought all the next day, and they were winning, and they were destroying the enemy, but the sun's fixing to go down. So what did Joshua do?
Sun, stand still.
Right. He prayed to the Father, and he said, "Sun, stand still. I need more time to finish this battle, and if it gets dark, these guys are going to get away." And Yahweh did that. And then verse 15 is where we ended. "And Joshua returned, and all Israel with him unto the camp to Gilgal." That these kings were attacking, right? But he came in, which is interesting because we're going to be talking about this in 2 weeks. Here's Gilgal defending. There's 5 kings attacking them, and he calls for help from Joshua. Joshua comes up and hits these guys. He doesn't go into Gilgal. He hits the attackers and then chases them all that day and into the night, really. So the fight's out here, so he wins. Now he's coming back to Gilgal, right, where the battle started. And it says, "But these 5 kings fled." Thank you. I had to cough too. "And hid themselves in a cave in Makkedah." Does anybody have in their Bible what Makkedah means? I wrote it down. It's like herding, like herding goats or cattle or whatever, so it's herding. And it reminded me, I'm thinking about naming our house here Makkedah. And I thought the two might be related. That's why I looked it up. They're not. Makkedah means like refuge, safety, that kind of thing. But this is Makkedah, which means herding. But the 5 kings fled, and they hid themselves in a cave at Makkedah. Now Joshua and his army have been destroying those armies, right? And chasing them and cutting them down and everything. But the kings, they didn't die with their men. They left the field of battle and run away. And they ran away. And now they're in this cave. And they're hiding out in this cave in Makkedah. And it was told to Joshua, saying, "The 5 kings are found hidden in a cave at Makkedah." And Joshua said, "Roll great stones upon the mouth of the cave." and set men by it for to keep them. And stay ye not, but pursue after your enemies, and smite the hindmost of them. Suffer them not to enter into their cities, for Yahweh your Elohim has delivered them into your hands. So they say, hey, we have these kings all trapped, the leaders of these armies. We've got them trapped in this cave. And Joshua says, well, roll stones in front of the cave and put a guard on it. But you guys take off and finish the fight. These guys are still running. We need to finish the battle. We don't have time to mess with these kings. And to me, when I read that, roll stones in front of the mouth of the cave, set a guard out front. What's that sound like? What?
They're Christ brings resurrection.
Yeah, it sounds like when they put Yeshua in the tomb, right? And they say, put the stone in it, set my seal upon it, put a guard on it. You know, you're going to die if you don't guard this thing. That's what it sounded like to me. But clearly, these kings are not a type of Yeshua, right? I mean, they're the opposite of it. But it just is kind of similar to me how there's this cave and they put it in. But who is a type of Yeshua? Joshua. Joshua is a type of Yeshua. And so here, what we're reading about, these 5 kings, these men are hiding in a cave from Joshua's wrath, right? Joshua is a type of Yeshua. Turn with me now back to Revelation chapter 6. Revelation chapter 6. We're going to start in verse 15. Now we got 5 kings hiding in a cave in Makkedah, and Joshua is there and puts a guard on them. In Revelation chapter 6, verse 15, we read, and the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. Well, who are they hiding from? They're hiding from Yah's vengeance that's coming, right? And who's bringing the heat? Yeshua, right? He's coming with that army. And said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? And so that is more, they're afraid of Joshua getting them, and so they're trying to hide in this cave, and they're afraid of Joshua's wrath. And as we're going to find out today, they have every reason in the world to be afraid of his wrath. Right? It's coming. But right now he's like, hey, we don't have time to mess with them. Keep them tied up in there. Put some rocks in so they can't get away. Put a guard on. Y'all go finish this fight. And so that's what they go and do. So we're back in Joshua. For Yahweh has delivered them into your hand. Verse 20. And it came to pass, when Joshua and the children of Israel had made an end of slaying them with a very great slaughter, till they were consumed, that the rest which remained of them entered into fenced cities. Now, I like the way Scriptures puts this so much better, because as I was reading this, I'm like, okay, the rest of them that remained, is that the people they're chasing, or is that themselves? Because it didn't say that any of the Israelites died in battle, so it wouldn't be remained. Somebody have Scriptures?
Till they had finished, but those who escaped went into walled cities.
Right. So they're slaughtering these guys who are running away, and they're just killing them by the bushel, but some of them escape, and they go back into the walled cities. Excuse me. When they're running out in the open, they're a lot easier to fight than when they're behind their walls with their spears and whatever they had back then. And so here we see that some escaped. All right. Verse 21. And all the people returned to the camp to Joshua at Makkedah. So Joshua has moved his general headquarters, if you will, up to Makkedah, to where this cave is. But his people were all out there fighting. Now they're coming back to Makkedah in peace. None moved his tongue against any of the children of Israel. They have been kicking hiney for over a day. And it's kind of like it reminds me in modern words, and you all know I watch a lot of earthly movies. You got something to say? That's kind of what it's like, right? You got anything to say? Because if you do, you know what's coming, right? Boom! And so these people, they're smarter. They're like, we're not saying a word. Y'all go on. We don't want to get your wrath up. And then said Joshua, open the mouths of the cave, and bring out those 5 kings unto me out of the cave. Now think about the poor, for lack of a better term, the privates in the Israelite army, right? First they say, put big stones in front of that cave. Now, my son and I think Sam was helping too, we were moving stones the other day, and these weren't big stones. The biggest one we moved was about this big, and that thing was heavy. We're like rolling it. But you get the picture. They're closing up a cave.
Yeah.
You got to close up the entrance of the cave so these guys can't come out. Those are some big stones that these guys are. So they had some privates do that, right? Because their version of NCOs and officers aren't moving these rocks. It's the Shlomo, come here, go put some stones up there. Okay. And so he's stacking all these rocks up. And now, not that long later, they're like, hey, open up those stones. Again, it's not the NCOs and the officers moving those stones. They're like Private Shlomo and somebody else. I always use Shlomo. Come take down these rocks. They're like, fine. And so they go do that.
Stack up the rocks? Stack down.
Take the rocks. Oh, wait. Now, so how many times have we moved those rocks? Twice? But there's more coming. But right now they've moved it twice. And they did so. And they brought forth those 5 kings unto him out of the cave, the king of Jerusalem, and the king of Hebron, and the king of Jarmuth, and the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. And it came to pass, when they brought out those kings unto Joshua. Now picture this. They go grab these guys. They probably had to go into the cave and get them, right? And they're probably a little bit afraid they're going to stab them when they go in there and stuff. So they grab these guys, they bring them out. And Joshua's standing there, General Joshua. He's surrounded by people, right? His people. And here comes the 5 kings who dared to stand against Israel being drug out. They probably got them half tied up or something. And the people are like jeering and ha, ha, ha. And so these guys, I can see it. I can film the scene of it. And so they're bringing them to Joshua. The king of Jerusalem, and it came to pass that when they brought those kings unto Joshua, that Joshua called for all the men of Israel and said unto the captains of the men of war, which went with him, come here. Hey, y'all, come here. Put your feet on the necks of these kings. And they came near and they put their feet on the necks of the kings. Is that any way to treat prisoners of war? Heck, soldiers today get in trouble taking pictures of prisoners of war, right? They throw these guys on the ground and they say, hey, you're a captain, you're a captain, you're a captain. Come here. Put your feet on his neck. You, come here, come here. Put your foot on his neck. Hold him down to the ground with your feet. Which in that culture, do y'all remember when somebody threw a shoe at George Bush in Iraq? And Americans are like, that's stupid. Somebody threw a shoe. Now he doesn't have a shoe. That's kind of how we look at it. No, in their culture, it's really an insult to kick somebody with your foot or to hit somebody with your shoe. And I don't know if you remember this, but there was a big statue of Saddam Hussein that they knocked down. They pulled it down with tanks, and it's fallen to the ground. And all these Iraqis swarm this statue of big, and they take their shoes off, and they're smacking the face with their shoe. Right? And so by putting your foot on their neck, that's what they're doing here. And it's just like, it's total humiliation. And people would be relieved to command if that happened today, right? That's cruel and unusual treatment of prisoners. And again, I say, just wait. What's going to happen here? So they got them down there. They put their foot on their necks. Those guys are going, hey, he's not, I can't breathe.
Yeah.
And Joshua said unto them, his men, fear not, nor be dismayed. Be strong and of good courage. For thus shall Yahweh do to all your enemies against whom ye fight. I have an asterisk next to that, and I've underlined it. That is a cool verse. That is a verse worthy of hanging on your wall. And Joshua said unto them, fear not, nor be dismayed. Be strong and of good courage, for thus shall Yahweh do to all your enemies against whom you fight. That'd be a good thing in a barracks to write there. That's what he'll do to all the enemies against whom you fight. when you're fighting the battle he wants you to fight.
Amen.
You don't get to just go pick, I don't like Scott, so I'm going to fight Scott and God's going to be with me. I think God's probably going to be with Scott in that case. Right? No, it's not you get to decide what you want to do, but the Father says this is where you're going and this is what you're going to do. We're going to go back there and read that later today. And so you're in His will and you're doing it righteously. Again, according to His will, according to His instructions. So, you know, you can't just decide, well, I'm an Israelite and come on guys, we're going to go join this battle. That's your idea for a battle. That's not Yah's idea. I don't know how well that's going to go for you. But that's an important verse. All right, here we go, 26. This is one of those verses that people say, oh, that's Old Testament God. But we read, I am Yahweh, I change not.
Which is why I haven't destroyed you punks.
We can read Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and forever. He doesn't change, right? So there's no such thing as, oh, that's Old Testament God. Now we're under the New Testament. You are under a new covenant, but it's the same God, and He didn't change. So this is one of those verses, 26. So he's got these guys pinned down. He tells all his guys, hey, you did great. Don't worry about it. Yah's on your side. And afterwards, Joshua smote them, and he slew them, and he hanged them on 5 trees. And they were hanging upon the trees until evening, as an example to all to see. Kind of like hanging the pirates in those metal cages up in the ports and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's barbaric. They surrendered. You captured them. And now you cut their head off and hang their bodies up in a tree for everybody to see? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, He did. You think God's going to judge him for that? Badly? No. That's what he was supposed to do. And it came to pass, at the time of the going down of the sun, that Joshua commanded, and they took them down off the trees, and they cast them into the cave wherein they had hid, and they laid great stones in the cave's mouth, which remain to this day. Hey, Shlomo, what are you doing over there? Get up! Get over here. Hey, put those stones back. What? Put the stones back. And then you know Shlomo and whoever are griping to each other. Put the stones up. Take the stones down. Put the stones up. You know what's happening tonight, don't you? We're going to take these stones down. I mean, you know, that's how they are. But it's just like, oh, those poor guys. But they're still there today as of the writing of this. And it came, yeah. They're there. So now look, 28. And that day Joshua took Makkedah, and he smote it with the edge of the sword, and the king thereof he utterly destroyed, them and all the souls that were therein. He let none remain, and he did to the king of Makkedah as he did to the king of Jericho. Now I think this because it talked about how the sun went down, and they left the bodies hanging trees till the sun went down, and then the sun's down, and they tell them to block up the cave. I think it is the next day, but if you think about it, in one 24-hour period, Joshua takes care of 6 kings. That's a pretty important 24-hour period.
And like 6 kings' armies.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't get the king if you haven't defeated the army. So then Joshua passed from Makkedah, and all of Israel went with him into Libnah, and they fought against Libnah. Now here's the thing. You can look up all these towns. You can use a search engine. I used to say Google it, but I don't recommend that anymore. But you can use a search engine, and you can look up where all these towns are today, and you can actually track the course of the battle that they did. But, so Joshua left Makkedah, all of Israel with him, and he went to Libnah, and he fought against Libnah, and Yahweh delivered it also, and the king thereof, into the hand of Israel, and he smote it with the edge of the sword, and all the souls that were therein, and he let none remain in it, but he did unto the king thereof as he did unto the king of Jericho. So that guy surrenders, he kind of humiliates him publicly, kills him, and hangs him in a tree too. And so now we're up to 7 kings. We can stop counting because this just keeps going. And Joshua passed from Libnah and all of Israel with him unto Lachish, and he encamped against it, and he fought against it. And Yahweh delivered Lachish unto the hand of Israel, which took it on the 2nd day, it took them 2 days, and smote it with the edge of the sword, and all the souls that were therein, according to all that he had done to Libnah. When it says all the souls that are in that city, they killed everybody. They killed every man, woman, and child in there, in that city. It's Old Testament God, right? Same God. People are in for a rude awakening in the future. And Horam the king of Gezer came up and helped Lachish, and Joshua smote him and his people until he had left none remaining. And from Lachish Joshua passed on to Eglon and all of Israel with him, and they encamped against it, and they fought against it. And they took it on that day, and they smote it with the edge of the sword, and all the souls that were therein he utterly destroyed that day, according to all that he had done in Lachish. And Joshua went up from Eglon, and all Israel with him unto Hebron, and they fought against it, and they took it, and they smote it with the edge of the sword, and the king thereof, and all the cities thereof, and all the souls that were therein. He left none remaining, according to all that he had done in Eglon, but he destroyed it utterly, and all the souls that were therein. These guys are going through conquering and slaying people by the boatload, and destroying cities. And Joshua returned, and all of Israel with him, to Debir, and he fought against it. And he took it, and the king thereof, and the cities thereof, and they smote them with the edge of the sword, and they utterly destroyed all the souls that were therein. He left none remaining, as he had done in Hebron, so he did in Debir, and to the king thereof, as he had done also to Libnah, and to her king. So Joshua smote all the country of the hills and of the south, and of the vale, and of the springs, and all their kings. He left none remaining, but utterly destroyed all that breathed, as Yahweh Elohim of Israel commanded. He did that destruction, death and destruction, because Yahweh told him to. Let's go look at that. Deuteronomy chapter 20. Look at that, I turned right there, because I had a piece of paper in there. Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 16. This is Yahweh speaking. He just told them how to treat some cities, but now he's telling them how to treat other cities. He says, "But of the cities of these people, which Yahweh thy Elohim does give thee for an inheritance," that means where you're going to live, "you shall save alive nothing that breathes." So that includes critters. "But thou shalt utterly destroy them, namely the Hittites, the Amorites," that's what we read about earlier, "the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, as Yahweh thy Elohim has commanded thee." If you're going to be a knight, you want to be an Israelite. That's what Doug used to say. This is why you're going to kill them all. "That they teach you not to do after all their abominations which they have done unto their gods, so should ye sin against Yahweh your Elohim." Wait a minute, what about coexist? What about, we're all worshiping in the way we choose to worship and leave me alone? Yah doesn't look at it that way. I am not saying we're all walking down to the nearest Buddhist temple and we're going to raise that thing to the ground. We are not going to do that. But in this case, Yah told him to do it. And Yah doesn't change. He doesn't appreciate you worshiping him in a way, trying to say you're worshiping God in a way that he has not said to worship him. It doesn't count. And he's got something for those people, and he's got something in store for them coming up. But this is why Joshua went and did all the things and killed all those people like he did, because Yahweh told him to. Go in there and kill everything that breathes. And the reason I want you to is so that you don't listen to them. Listen to them and hear and have them sway you. He doesn't even want you in their presence. And so people ask me, they've asked me on the internet, so can a Jehovah's Witness or whatever come stay at Shofar Mountain? Are you kidding me? No. You're an Israelite, or you're not coming here, because the Father wants the land clean. And so, no, the best Buddhist in the world can't come here. No, that's not what Yah wants for his people. And we don't even need to hear that stuff. We don't need to have them sway us with some kind of words or whatever. All right, so let's keep going. We're almost done. Yah commanded it. Verse 41. "And Joshua smote them from Kadesh Barnea even unto Gaza, and all the country of Goshen, even unto Gibeon," just the whole place. And all these kings in their land did Joshua take at one time, because Yahweh, Elohim of Israel, fought for Israel. Remember we read earlier? When he's with us, who can be against us? The reason they were able to do what they did was not because the Israelites, former slaves 40-some years ago, were such mighty warriors. It's because we have a mighty Yah. What's that song? What a mighty Yah we serve. That's why. Because Yah was with them and he fought for Israel. And we sang something about that today. Because I said we're going to hear that again. Yah fought for Israel. And Joshua returned and all Israel with him unto the camp to Gilgal for a much needed rest. That is the sermon for today. And I think the key point to take away, because who are we? We're Israel. We are Israel. We are grafted in Israel, and Yahweh fights for Israel. We're his people, and his people will prevail. Does that mean none of us will die? No, it doesn't mean that. But in this case, after Ai, they're not losing a whole lot of people, right? Because Yah's doing the fighting for them. As long as they're fighting the battles Yah wants them to fight. As long as they're doing so in a righteous manner and they're conducting themselves in a righteous manner. There's many examples all through this word where one person, well, Ai's one of them. One person messes it up for everybody. And we read about that when we read about Ai. If he is with us, who can be against us? Hallelujah. Let's pray.